Look, grace to oneself is probably the thing I think about the most subconsciously. I talk so much about not beating up yourself. Like, this just becomes, the relationship you have with yourself is literally the whole game. And so my question is actually the reverse. What's the alternative, and why would you not show yourself grace? So it's really funny. You know, when you just gave your context, I'm like, makes sense, right? You're hanging out with all these 23-year-olds, even though you look 18, by the way. You really shook me with your 30. I was like, is she in high school? So look, I view this as very practical. I don't understand why you would beat yourself up. I'm not sure why one wouldn't want to give themselves grace. The rest of the world is shitting on you at all times. Why not be kind to yourself? Don't join in, right? And really, I think what works for me, and I think this is gonna be the biggest question you need to ask yourself, is how much do you value outside validation and from whom? You know, I think it's really easy to give yourself grace once you don't give a fuck what people think about you, including your parents and siblings and plus ones. It gets really easy. It gets real easy. So I think one's relationship with themselves, I think, is directly correlated to their relationship with other people's opinions. I admire my mother more than life. I think she's the single best human being on earth, and I give her an unbelievable amount of credit for everything that I am. I do not live my life based on her opinions or for her validation. And I think this is what you need to be thinking about. I'll give you a good one, team. When I tell you, if you're like selected to get a full-time offer versus not, I'm gonna say this very crystal clear to you. It is pure serendipity of a couple people's opinions. It is not a reflection that you're good or bad. If the God of good and bad came down after this process is done, I am sure that she would say to us, you were right about this person, but you were wrong about, like, it's just, that's how life works. You know what I mean? It's just serendipity. Yeah. It's just serendipity. I think too many people have been trained by school and life to think there's a right way to do shit. There is no right way. There's life. Serendipity. Some people will be like, yo, this is the fucking best. And they get a full-time gig here and they have a massive career. But guess what? You know what they don't know? Is that if they actually didn't get a job here, went to a different job, that they were gonna meet the love of their life in that job, and they would have married a much better person for them there than if they would have stayed here. How about that shit? Life.
Yeah, that's so good. I did want to also add another question, just to follow up with Jacob and his two questions.
Between you and Jacob, I'm going to be out of here, and only two people are going to fucking ask questions. But go ahead. I'm joking. Go ahead.
Just one quick thing. I know you were born in Belarus, so I know your parents are also not American, and my parents are also not American. So I was wondering, from an immigrant's perspective, what you can speak to, especially when it comes to business and kind of, like I was talking about, having that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of immigrants on this call. I can tell visually, I'm making assumptions, but what immigrant kids know is like, we have it different than American kids. And not that it's better or worse, and there's plenty of immigrants that are very American in their style, and there's very many Americans that are immigrants. This is a general statement. It is different. We live for our parents more outside the US than people in the US do generally, and so, but at the same token, I had a mother, again, I'm an immigrant, that didn't do to me what most immigrant families did. She didn't say that school was the only way out. She didn't think that how I acted was a reflection on her. She had her own self-esteem. So I got very fortunate. But what I would say to all the immigrants here is, you're gonna have to find that place that I just delivered earlier. You could admire and love your parents the most for what they've done for you and to set you up, but you cannot live for them. And the second you stop living for them and you live for your happiness, you actually deliver to your parents what they actually wanted all along, was for you to be happy. They just think you being happy oftentimes is good grades, good schools, money, the right husband, wife. But when it's all said and done, they just want you to be happy, and the only way for you to be happy is to not listen to them.
So how would you suggest, as, young professionals here at Vayner or not at Vayner, how are we going to build those connections and relationships with people?
By talking about shit that you like.
Cool, okay.
So like, let me break that down for you. There's a reason we have Slack and we have tons of channels with different stuff. To your point, it might be difficult for you have that combo, but you might be able to go into some of our general chats and just talk about the game last night or the restaurant you went to. People network through interests, not just through work realities, right? So, I mean, look, there's also something called like breaking through with things that aren't comfortable. So let's think that through, right? You know, to Sarah's point, as you can see, she talks about she's been working for 25 years and that's hard for her too. Let me tell you something that's hard for me, Jacob. Working out and eating well.
Yeah, that is, as someone who goes to the gym every day, it's very hard, especially the eating part.
Yeah, so for me, I could, you know, you're a young man, but I can tell you at 38, I had never put a muscle in my body and never ate properly in my life. And so this morning when I worked out and woke up at 6:45, even though I worked until midnight last night, that wasn't easy, but I did it. And so, you know, when someone says, hey, I struggle with networking. Well, if you value networking and you understand networking is valuable, I'm aware you may be introverted. I'm aware that it might come easier for Fernando C than you, or it may not. People are different, but just because people are different doesn't mean certain things aren't valuable, and it doesn't mean that people aren't capable to do things that don't feel comfortable or come easy to them. I don't work out and eat better now for the last 10 years for kicks and giggles or because I like it. I fucking hate it. 10 years later, I hate it. But I do it. And so there's also a little bit of that element of real life, which is it may not come easy to you, but if you think it's important, you may have to learn how to get uncomfortable. And I will tell you right now, one of the biggest issues in the world, and not for Gen Z, for boomers, for anybody who's 100 and for anyone who's one of the great issues in society right now is people aren't breaking through and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. We got real soft out here. So also another way to think about what I just said. But everything works. Life is life. Like, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. You know what I mean? But I think finding a way to make networking easy for you and everyone here, I always think that's around common interests and tactics. I tell everybody, now we're a little bit in a virtual world, but I always told people, and anyone for these next 4 weeks that are in any of these offices, live in the cafeteria and just say hi. This is a nice place. Most people don't network well because they're scared of rejection, right? They're scared of being blown off, that they're insecure. But this is a nice place. Like, people are nice here. So saying hi is like a fruitful concept. So I think one of the most terrible things about fear is that it's the greatest virus of our time. It is humans' greatest virus. That when people take on fear, they immediately try to deploy it on someone else to feel better. And so one of the things I'm most proud of is one of my greatest strengths, but also when it goes too far, one of my great vulnerabilities is I take on my fear and I don't express it out. What I tend to do, it's very rare for me to get to the stage that I'm gonna tell you, but occasionally when I'm at the highest point of fear or concern that I can get to, I tend to just go home and just like sit within myself and almost like, if I was like a superhero, I would like go into like a ball and it's almost like, you know how like snakes shed their skin? I shed my fear by deploying gratitude to myself in almost like a meditation state. And I've only done that 2 or 3 times. Every other time I'm just doing it naturally as I'm moving. As the fear or anxiety comes in, I'm in parallel pounding myself to shed it. And usually that works for me, it never tips over. So that's how I deal with it. I don't think most people are like me. I think most people deal with fear by talking to their safest person, their mom, their husband, their best friend. I think that's nice, but what I'm very happy about is that we finally destigmatized therapy. I think the right way to deal with fear is to talk to somebody who isn't your friend or family to get it out, because when you get fear out of your mouth, you feel better. And that's what I think people should do.